In Math Lesson 4.3, we're going to be representing decimals in expanded form. You will need your math journal, and you will need your whiteboard, and you will need to do all of the things that are expected of you each day. Let's go ahead and take the number 317 on your whiteboard. And I'm going to ask you to write the number in expanded form. So here's what I want to see, and then you can do the next two yourself. 317 can be written as 300 plus 10 plus 7, or it could be written as 3 times 10 to the second power plus 1 times 10 to the first power plus 7 times 10 to the 0 power. So I want you to do the next two different ways. So use exponents. That will help you. So please do number 1 and number 2, and I've done number 1 as an example for you, the 317. So go ahead and write these in expanded form 2 different ways. Go ahead and pause your video. All right, don't just keep going. I expect you to pause that video and do this. Remember, as you move into middle school and a 6th grader, your teacher will expect that you've practiced this. Watching is not sufficient. All right, so let's take 1,956. First way I would do this is just to take 1,000 plus 900 plus 50 plus 6. If I were to write it as an exponent, I would say 1 times 10 to the 1/2 power plus 9 times 10 to the 1/2 power plus 5 times 10 to the 1st power plus 6 times 10 to the 0 power. Number 2, 10,941. You shouldn't be watching this video unless you have it written in expanded form and are being honest. So we would take 10,000 plus 900 plus 40 plus 1. To do that using exponents, 1 times 10 to the 4th power plus 9 times 10 to the 2 power plus 4 times 10 to the 1st power plus 1 times 10 to the 0 power. We're going to go ahead and move right into our math journals to page 118. 118. We're going to use expanded form and what we know about it and apply it to decimals. So writing decimals in expanded form, shade the grid to represent 3/10. Add shading to the grid in another color so that the grid shows 31/100 in all. Then use a third color to add shading so that the grid shows 312,000ths. So go ahead and grab yourself some markers, crayons, or colored pencils. Stop the video or press pause while you do that. You can use pen, and marker, and pencil. So I'm going to start by shading in yellow 3/10, which is the same thing as saying 300,000. Remember, I can put 3/10 would be the same as saying 300. So there's 100. This is 200. Each one of those squares is made up of 10 smaller ones. So that would be 3/10 or 300,000ths. Each column represents 100. Now it says to add shading to the grid in another color so that the grid shows 31. Now in order to show 31, remember, be the same thing as adding a 0 behind it, 310. So I'm not just adding 1 more, I'm adding 10 more when I think of it in terms of thousands. Now, then use a third color to show 312. So I need just 2 more. So that shows this is 300, this is 10 plus 2 more in blue. Down at the lower part of page 118, it says use different versions of expanded form to complete the table below. Standard notation is in the first column, and different versions of expanded form. So it's asking us to do it 3 different ways, but it gives us an example here in the first one. So that's helpful. I always look to those examples and say, well, mine look just like that. So we're going to take the number 2 and 473 thousandths, say it, and I'm going to write it as a sum of its individual place values. So I'm going to say this is worth 2 plus the 4 is worth 4/10. The 7 is worth 7/100. Remember, we're isolating each place value. And the 3 is worth 3/1000. Write it. Now in the next column, we're going to take it times whatever place value. So the very first place after the decimal is going to look like this. This is the tenths. The next one will look like this, which is the hundredths. And the third place value is going to look like this, which is the thousandths. So just keep that in mind as you are writing. So tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we're going to take 2 times the whole number 1 plus, we're going to move on to the 4. Now we're going to take 4 times, and it's in the tenths place, so look down below, plus the 7 is in the hundredths, so I'm going to take 7 times the hundredths place, and then the 3 times the thousandths place. And then they did the third one for us. So instead of writing it as a decimal, instead of writing it as 1/10, they're going to write it as a fraction. So let's try another one together. This number down here says 94 and it ends in the thousands. So we read 94 thousandths. Read it. All right, so we're going to start with writing it as a decimal. So we don't have any whole number. We don't have any tenths, so I'm going to just move to the hundredths. I'm going to just isolate the 9 in the hundredths and the 4 in the thousandths. Now I'm going to use decimals. So I'm going to say there's nothing in the tenths. There's a 9, so I'm going to multiply 9 times the hundredths place. So remember, look down here, plus a 4. Oops, okay, let me do that again. 4 in the thousandths place. Now we get to do the third one exactly like the middle one, except for replace these decimals with fractions. So 0 times 1/10 plus 9 times 100th plus 4 times 1,000ths. So again, naming them the same way, they just look a little bit different. Pause the video if needed at any point in time. Again, you'll be taking a picture of this, so make sure you're doing this with me. Moving down the page to 7 and 752 thousandths. So it's read 7 and 752 thousandths. Say it. So we'll take 7 plus, we'll take that next 7 tenths plus the 5, which is 5 hundredths, plus 2 thousandths. Now we will write that as multiplication times decimals. So we'll start with 7 times 1 plus 7 times 1/10 plus 5 times 100th plus 2 times 1,000th. And we'll do the same thing, but we'll write those decimals as fractions. 7 times 1 plus 7 times 1/10 plus 5 times 100th plus 2 times 1,000th. Now they did the lesson just a little bit different. We're going to add these all together. So I know that it has a tenths, it has a hundredths, it has a thousandth. So if you want to, you can go ahead and draw those lines in. We know the 6 is in the tenths. We know the 3 is in the hundredths. And the 7 is in the thousandths. How would I read that one? 637 thousandths. So we're going to reuse those in decimals. So we have 6 times 1/10. We have a 3 in the hundredths, so we take 3 times 100th. And we have a 7 in the thousandths, so 7 times 1,000th. And lastly, let's convert those decimals into fractions. So 6 times 1/10 plus 3 times 100th plus 7 times 1,000th. Moving on to journal page 119. Journal page 119 says use 3 number cards to create a decimal on your place value mat. Record the decimal you created in one of the boxes below. Write the decimal in expanded form, then shade a thousandths grid using a different color to show the place value, the value of each digit. So you will need 3 different colored markers, crayons, or colored pencils. Again, you will be taking a picture of this, so please make sure that you have 3 different colors. I don't want to see all of it shaded in one color. I will ask you to redo it, so please take the time right now to get 3 different colored markers. Okay, I'll pick 3 cards. I picked a 4, a 7, and a 9. So we can make this anything. Let's make it 479 thousandths. In expanded form, it would look like 4 tenths plus 7 hundredths plus 9 thousandths. So I'm going to start by representing the 4 tenths or 400. Remember when I read it 479, I can hear myself say the 400. Or I think of this as 10 long sections and I would shade in 4 of them. Again, you need to do this in 3 different colors. think of this as being in tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at those bolder lines. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I just shaded 4 of them. Now I'm going to look at the 700ths. 700ths. So there's 100 of these larger boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then lastly, 9 thousandths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's try one more like that. I drew the numbers 1, 8, and 2. So let's make this decimal 182 thousandths. Expanded form, it would be 1/10 plus 8 hundredths plus 2 thousandths. Again, remember, after the decimal point, we have tenths, then we have hundredths, then we have the thousandths. Sorry, I never have enough room to write. So I'm going to start with 1/10. Remember, we can think about this as also being in 10 equal sections by looking at those bolder, long lines that divide it vertically. So again, 3 different colors. So I'm going to start with 1/10, 1 out of 10 equal sections. Next, I'm going to take 8 hundredths. This would represent 1 out of 100 boxes. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and lastly 2 thousandths. Remember those tiniest segments, there would be 1,000 of those tiny little sections in this whole box. So remember to always take a picture of your journal pages from your math lessons and upload it to Schoology.